Hey everybody, I'm Nico.
And I'm TK.
And that makes this X is for podcast, your one and only blah, blah, blah. You know what we're doing. We're talking about comics, right? This is our first episode of the new year. Really excited about that. Feels pretty good to be talking about comics in 2025.
We're time traveling, just like Cable.
Yeah, I guess we're time traveling back to 1993 if it's just like Cable. But that's neither here nor there. No, I'm pretty excited to be talking books. Just been a bunch of really exciting things going on for comics lately, which I think is better than not. You know, we've had a couple of weird years, but
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I think one of the things is that every other year they are completely revamping and completely realigning every publishing schedule. This is the new buy-in. This is the new buy-in. And it really feels like this year we're not going in with a new buy-in. It feels like this year it's just One Nation Under Doom is continuing. We're not being told get ready for the complete restart and reset of the Marvel Universe in March. With the DC Universe, even though All In has been a massive reset in many ways, it has been a continuation of what was going on in the DC Universe prior and has not been a universe reformatting on that scale.
I get you.
So super excited to talk about some DC and some Marvel, and I know that Rivals announced that Fantastic Four is going to be
Family's
appearing
in the mix.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about that. I'm also maybe not excited about that.
Why not excited?
Because I don't like them.
Okay.
I don't like the Fantastic Four. I don't like the first family. They're so unlikable. I wish they were more like the Patty's Pub crew. Like, I wish they were fun, but they're so unlikable. I mean, so the one thing I will say about Rivals Fantastic Four is they all look really hot, which is great news. That's great. But Reed just never seems cool or fun or funny or interesting. Sue is depressing because she is such a hot babe, and the hottest man alive wants to take her to his fish kingdom and do things to her. And then the other hottest man alive is like, I could rule the world and I would choose you as my wife. Yeah, you can be hot wearing a metal face mask that never comes off. Just go with this. And she's just like, no, I'm going to stick with this really boring guy who neglects me and our children and always is doing it for the science and keeps this insane ass load of secrets. Then we have Ben Grimm, the people's Jew. I say that as a Jewish person, I'm allowed. Who Ben might be the only one I really like, but I really don't like the fact that they're like, him and Kitty Pryde get together for latkes whenever Marvel gets in trouble for not having enough latkes. And then Johnny Storm is just like, he's fine, I guess. Hottest Chris Evans has ever been. That was his one true Marvel role. It was not Captain America. And if you think otherwise, you're wrong.
Well, hold on. I do want to say the other problem with that, he's hot, sure, but absolutely pointless. Like, to your 100%. Point. But that's even the problem. So that could not have been his ultimate role. Because
no, it is. It absolutely is. Yeah, that's.
I just can't invalidate the Marvel universe that way. I cannot invalidate the Marvel Cinematic Universe that way. Not even to be
I'm such a jerk about that
Fantastic
opinion.
Four.
I just really think he was wrong for Captain America, and I love his Johnny Storm.
So I feel like one of the things that we are facing down is the inevitable of the fact that the Fantastic Four trailers got to drop soon.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to like that either.
You know, I think that I don't really have too many thoughts down pat yet for it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I am really excited about is the opportunity to go into this film with something new. I am really burnt out on trying to recapture things from the Endgame era, which is why I think having people come back as different people is actually great. But I just feel like I don't know. I'm pretty positive on a lot of it. I think it's going to be It's going to be a good time. I'm pretty excited. 2025. It's going to be 25 great things about comics. 2 every month. Plus a third one in February because it's a good birth month. So definitely here for it. But to that point, Minor to Marcus, I am wondering if you fell asleep on Deadpool and Wolverine, the comic or the movie. Hard to fall asleep on the movie. It was really loud. Kind of easy to fall asleep on the comic. It was just more of the same.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. It certainly was. I appreciated that it wasn't trying to capture the magic of the movie.
Yeah, and so I see Minor says that he fell asleep on the movie, not the comic. But, I even think that's part of it. Like, I'm at a place with moving things forward where I'm really counting the amount of time that you're spending on something and then contrasting it to something else. Something that I definitely noticed is people talking about how the runtime of the first Wicked movie is longer than the whole musical. Yeah, good. Expand something that should be more than an hour and a half. Yes, do the job. Do your job. And, when you think about What If, What If is a Marvel tradition, but What If is a Marvel tradition when there's hundreds of issues a year and not 30 episodes altogether. So, like, I'm really thinking about how much what does what in regard to something. In regard to the amount of outright fucking misery I put up with from the Fox Marvelverse, Deadpool and Wolverine being a slapstick, rollicking, my balls in your mouth good time, yeah, I'll take it. And I totally get why it wasn't everybody's movie, and I'm not here to tell anybody they're wrong. All drag is art, and all art is subjective. Just ask Swan. So I'm here for it, but the thing that definitely caught my eye is I was not a big fan of Logan. I was not a big fan of Deadpool 2. I was not a big fan of the New Mutants. So, like, I liked a dumb good time.
Interesting that you put Deadpool 2 in that list.
Yeah, Deadpool 2 was not for me.
Fair.
It was just sort of boring. Like, it was
I thought Deadpool 2 and I thought Wolverine and Deadpool 2 were very similar, which is why I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and that's even part of it for me. I think that okay. I did not like reading Deadpool and Wolverine #1.
Yeah.
I didn't like it for 100 reasons, and all of them felt what I'm now going to start calling tropic. When you get away from good things and you go somewhere hot for no reason. Opening on what could have only been described as a John McCree, Steve Dillon, Garth Ennis, edited by Axel Alonso on a ton of cocaine in 1999 Vertigo opening, did nothing for me. And then for it to go from that to this idea of I'm the only one who can talk for these characters, sort of male self-importance narration style that is not indicative of Ben Percy, but is indicative of generations of male writers who can't imagine anybody but their own voice for these characters. This solo voce that winds up driving me out of these characters. This book could have been a really good time, but instead it was just Ben Percy's most recurrent hits.
What's really funny is I think it's as we are both saying, the first thing I said was like, I was surprised that this didn't pull more from Deadpool and Wolverine tropes and like try and make itself a little more like that. And you pointed out that it's very full of tropes. I think they thought what's going to blow everybody's mind is when they open this thinking they're getting Deadpool and Wolverine, the movie, the comic. And instead, we give them all this stuff that they've never gotten before. But the thing is, we have gotten it before. It just isn't what the movie was. And that's great. It's great not to always have comic tie-ins, be beholden to the movie and trying to pull the same tone and same tropes and give you the same thing. Like, don't worry, it's still McDonald's French fries no matter what. But if you read really any amount of comics, period, but definitely if you read Percy's Wolverine, Percy's X-Force, if you've seen a lot of Josh Cassara art lately, and if you're reading Marvel Comics, you probably have, this was all everybody's greatest hits. This was all everybody's, opening salve. There, the first move they all use in chess every time, and that's perfectly cute. But I don't know. Once I got over realizing that it was not going to hew heavily to Deadpool and Wolverine the movie, which I kind of realized immediately because Percy doesn't write like that. And I will say, to its credit, one thing that's going to give it a bump in the grade from me, Percy writes Deadpool's humor a little closer to who I have said is the definitive Deadpool humor writer for me now, which is Alyssa Wong. Alyssa's Deadpool had just some really solid, stupid humor that was still not chimichanga fart joke boobies. And Percy, for all of his Ron Swanson Man of the Woodsness, is also not going to give you chimichanga fart joke boobies when he does humor. And so, if nothing else, I very much appreciated that what little humor we got from Deadpool in this issue moved away from that zone I really do not love.
And especially because it's complicatedly reductive when you're talking about specifically, I would say, Deadpool. Yeah. I think that what a lot of people think they love when people say they love Thanos, what they mean is they love Marvel vs. Capcom. When people say they love Thanos, what they mean is they love Infinity Gauntlet, maybe. When people say they love Thanos, what they mean is they love 15 minutes of Endgame. When people say they love Thanos, they're engaging with an identity of a character. They're not engaging with the actual character. And I don't necessarily mean that for everybody on the planet, but I do mean, unfortunately, a lot of people have this idea of Thanos that does not include the actual character. That is just sort of like, I'm a simp for death. And so all of my plans ultimately just fall apart when I don't get what I want from death. Like, literally, he's kind of like
which is hilarious because that is why I love him.
But so he's like this boring villain, and I feel like that's kind of what Deadpool is to people.
Yeah, Deadpool is a boring anti-hero.
They think of him as this like specific slice of Deadpool, not who he is in the comics. And so for me, I really find when people do give him the fart joke humor, it doesn't just reduce comics, or Deadpool, it reduces comics in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because it also makes a lot of really false assumptions about who's reading comics. And again, it's so wild to me that so much of Marvel is these guys being like, we got to get Spider-Man out of his marriage so that the teens who love this book will keep reading it. And meanwhile, kids didn't like Spider-Man when they were doing Brand New Day, and now kids like Miles Morales. Peter Parker is, and I can't keep talking about this on the show because it just becomes the only thing I talk about, but Peter Parker only matters to people above the age of 30 in any way, and Peter Parker doesn't really matter to anybody anymore. Again, people love Peter Parker iconically, like they love the ideography of Peter Parker. They don't really love the character, in part because anytime you start to love the character, anytime you start to say like the family man who was just starting to get his life together with his wife, they cut his wife out of the photo. And then, now I really love Ultimate Peter Parker because we're back to that idea, but it just sort of feels like we're very quickly going to lose it. But you're absolutely right. Thanos and Deadpool are two fantastic examples because the iconography is so clear, and you can point to moments that we should and everybody should love. Even if it's a Josh Brolin moment, there are some great things in Endgame that you can point to and go like, but he's huge and he's purple and he like kicks the shit out of all of them. That's fun, and that is fun. But do you love the character? Did you love that moment? And it's fine to love the moment, but you didn't love the character because that's not a character, that's a moment. And with Deadpool, it's so much of the same. Like, you saw a hilarious panel, you saw a funny conceit in one series by Brian Posehn over a decade ago, and that's great, but is that the character?
And that even winds up being my personal debate with the entire argument. Like, I don't believe there are fake fans. And like, I talk about that on the show a lot because too many people say fake fans. And what the fuck does that even mean? I don't believe there are fake fans, but I do believe there are people who perhaps mispurport the volume of their knowledge as something maybe a little greater than it is. And I don't necessarily even mean that as a specific dig. I don't mean that like somebody who doesn't have more knowledge is automatically like a fool. But I do think that you wind up with people who lack the experience on a character, and so sometimes you get these really hollow iterations. And so while I do appreciate in many ways, as you pointed out, Andrew, yeah, people trying to gatekeep fandom, but what's interesting is like when people try to gatekeep fandom, one of the things that they forget is that like your fandom isn't my fucking fandom. I don't like the same things you like, and I certainly don't like them for the same reasons if I do. And so like you wind up with this iterative battle. This might not have been a Deadpool I don't like, but this still was not a Deadpool I liked. This might not have been a bad Wolverine, but it was Wolverine the Master Detective, which I don't always get. I don't know. This was just not the book for me.
Yeah, it wasn't the book for me either. And I mean, I knew it wouldn't be. I just need to keep Percy and Wolverine away from each other. Percy and anybody who could ever be a member of X-Force, I'd like to just keep them separated for a little bit. I love Percy. I really do. Write some ghosts. Riding ghosts. I would give him a man thing. I would give him a vampire person. I bet he could make Morbius interesting. I've got a list of cool characters that I would be perfectly happy to see Ben Percy write. But I like Ben Percy, the horror writer. Ben Percy, the Ron Swanson, is not my cup of tea all the time. And that's usually who we're getting when it's Wolverine, when it's X-Force, when it's Deadpool. Like I said, I really appreciated that his Deadpool humor was a little less so stupid it's not even consumable. And I thought it was interesting that he chose to cut out a lot of places where Deadpool could be humorous because of a story conceit that means that Deadpool is not using his own voice. Is that brave? Is that weak? I don't know. But it was interesting because most writers would not do that. Most writers would say, like, if I get Deadpool on panel for 26 pages, I need to use him for all 26 pages because this is where I work out my tight five. And I appreciate that he didn't. It's a weird thing. Like I was refreshed reading it, but there's always this part of my brain that's like, but maybe you couldn't hack it, and that's why you cut it out.
And I do think that is the situation in many cases with Ben Percy. Not even can't hack it, but can't comfortably and can't authentically. Yeah. And I don't know. When a solo artist tries to make their band sound again, you hear it right away.
You leave Tom York alone.
I can't. He just won't go away. When an actor tries to recreate a character that they did in an ensemble piece, you can see when Charlie Day is playing Charlie Day over and over again. You can see when Glenn Howerton, just to use the Sunny Gang. But I feel like when a comic book writer and artist do it, it goes one of two ways. It's like, God, that's classic. Or it's like, gosh, that's kind of sad. And when Jason Aaron would not be sunset quietly, it was like watching The Good Fight. Watching Ben Percy not sunset his era of Wolverine quietly feels like between him and Claremont and Hickman all having Wolverine titles at the same time, it feels like gatekeeping.
And not one of them matters.
Not at all.
Not one of them matters. Not one of them can ever be relevant to anything. Especially here, spoiler alert. So click away for 2 seconds because I'm going to say what happens at the end of this issue. If Strife is here, it's like, that's not even a good, that reveal sucks because it specifically means this book cannot matter. Because if Strife were here and it mattered, it would be a whole other thing. It wouldn't be happening in some corner of a Wolverine Deadpool tie-in book.
Unless that has something to do with the upcoming Weapon X-Men that is launching, being written by Joe Casey with art by Chris Cross and Mark Morales, which will feature Wolverine, Cable, Chamber, and Deadpool. Wolverine, Deadpool, Cable, Chamber, and Thunderbird as an uneasy squad delivering bone-crunching payback. It is not related to Weapon X-Men, the Wolverine-themed limited series featuring writing by Christos Gage from literally last year, but instead it is going to be basically what if these two books were combined.
No, Jack, it's a new thing that I created.
Yeah, no, it's Weapon X-Men Classic.
Yeah, you're right though. It could this could link up to that, which at the very least would give us something, but otherwise it's just like, okay, there's strife. Sure.
And I think it sets up Pepos to take over Deadpool and Wolverine. Because I don't see Percy staying on for more than...
interesting.
Yeah, because he's already writing Cable. I don't see Percy staying on for very long.
Yep. Okay, all right. Generous B-, realistically C+.
Yeah, C for me. Generous C+. I do think Cassara draws a really solid Wolverine.
Yeah, I feel so bad. It's nothing about his talent.
No.
I'm just a little sick of him. I don't know. I'm just a little sick of... I'm especially sick of him drawing X-Force. It's the same thing as Percy. Like, get them away from this stuff. Cassara can only draw Power Pack now. Like, it's Power Pack and Runaways and only drawing women respectfully. Not that he draws them disrespectfully, but I'm just like, I don't know. I'm so sick of the machismo art and Wolverine's 4 foot wide box jaw. I don't know, man. He's a really talented artist and I see so much stuff he does that I love. But I'm just like, okay, great. Here it is. There's the guns and claws and a guy grimacing while his eye gets shot out. Another one.
He does one of the complaints I often have is that Marvel either gives guys 6 foot long areas or no bulge at all.
Yeah.
Cassara actually gets a pretty good human anatomy for what a man's genes look like.
Sure.
It's something where like there's a subtle sexuality that lends the book realism, but sometimes the realism falls short because those little details that make Cassara's art so human and so real and so natural do not behoove a possessed Deadpool.
I would love to see him draw a Squirrel Girl series.
Yeah, a Squirrel Girl series, something that exposes the ideas that, like, I'd even take like an Elektra series, even though I know she's a little bit.
I was going to say Elektra, but that one feels like too obvious.
Yeah.
I actually think he would do an amazing Elektra, but it just feels like she runs the X-Force of the non-X people Marvel universe at all times. She is truly the Wolverine of everything that is not Wolverine. And damn it, we should treat her like such.
On that topic, Cable is kind of the Wolverine that isn't Wolverine. He's
he is the Wolverine that should be Wolverine, but is not Wolverine.
I appreciate that here they tried to make him K-Bull. Like, they tried to put the bull in Cable. He's strong and he's powerful and he charges in and nothing stops him and he's here to be powerful. But, like, if I was recently bored of Deadpool and Wolverine, I was long ago bored of Cable, Love, and Chrome, which feels about as fresh as Amistad Maupin returning to tell me more tales of the city. This felt like your
references are on fire today.
It was just the oldest thing I have read. This truly felt like somebody coming to me and being like, have you seen the guy from Christmas Story? He got hot. It's that level of old meme.
Did you... and it turns out it's not him, right?
The guy who got hot?
Yeah, it's not.
No, it is. It's just like 13 years later. That image is from like 2010 and it's 2025.
Because the one where they're like, the guy from Power Rangers got hot. It's not him. It's like a Sean Cody model that looks vaguely like him.
Yeah, there's an old Randy Blue video that features a guy that looks uncannily like Austin St. John.
Yeah.
Who took his name from John Austin, the original Gomez Adams.
Oh. Did you read the letters page or any of the stuff, any of the writing at the end?
Mm-hmm.
I very much appreciated that he mentioned Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix and Ascani Sun. I very much appreciated that there was reference to some of the influences of this story, and I did see them, and I liked that. I appreciated that. This book was a really good lesson in, like, sometimes you are so inspired by a thing, you maybe just make it over again, and that doesn't do you any good. You know, Quentin Tarantino lucked out so much because nobody besides a very select few bunch of film nerds saw the movies that he was very openly, very clearly, very proudly plagiarizing from, because they were old, usually Western or Asian films. They were kung fu films. Nobody, probably, like, realistically, nobody's coming after you for infringement. But he took whole scenes, whole shots from films, and just copied them and put them into things like Kill Bill, one of my favorite 2 movies of all time. Because he was so inspired, he wanted to deliver that to the world. And that's really cool. And there's something curatorial about what Tarantino does that does make it a little interesting. But once you hear and once you see those films, once Tarantino tells you exactly which films they are, and then you go and look them up, it's a little less impressive. Like, he didn't come up with that cool thing you saw. Somebody else came up with it, and Tarantino saw it and copied it shot for shot, second for second. And that's, like I said, there's something curatorial about it that's interesting, and you get a pat on the back for being a tastemaker. But do you get a pat on the back for being an original filmmaker? No. And then especially if you're talking about how it's a reference, like, no. And that is kind of the same thing that we got here. Cable is constantly in the future in a war. And I appreciate when somebody gets that and references that, but I don't know that we got anything particularly original here.
You know, and that's one of the things that's really tough. Like, I think consistency is key, right? Like, I like to imagine from the feedback I've gotten, I'm consistently great in bed, but consistently a disappointment in relationships. These are just things I accept. Cable. Consistently going to be put in stories I don't enjoy, but consistently going to be a character I love. And what this issue did not have for me was the good in bed. This issue did not have is the character that I love, despite the stories that I don't. So, to use that metaphor, when someone's great in bed, but like a terrible date, like, you still hook up. Like, you still call them and you're still like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? But you don't go out to dinner because you don't do that to yourself. This was, for me, kind of like, he's still hot, but what if the sex was so bad the last 3 times that what's the point? This made me realize Cable never should have been a part of Krakoa. Cable, along with all of the other time-displaced people, should have said loudly, at once, nope, we're time-displaced. We're from the future. We've seen utopias come and go 1,000 times. In fact, we've seen 4 of your utopias come and go in the last 30 years. So, we won't be a part of this dumb one. Me, Rachel, Bishop, all the cool time-displaced people. And you know what? We're going to take Kanan with us. I know it was like her greatest moment, but we were going to take her with us, and then we're going to take Grey Crow too, because he's just fucking great. So, like, this made me realize how much we keep doing exactly this with Cable, To the benefit of who?
I even really like that idea. So part of me wants to say I hate that idea because then it would mean that Cable couldn't have been part of Krakoa. But I like that idea, and also we had Kid Cable anyway. So I really do think we could have not had Cable at all during Krakoa, and it might have been great. Scott and Jean in 1994 traveled 2,000 years into the future to raise their son in bodies with suspiciously large noses. I don't want to get into it. This book takes place 17 years before that. So already we're doing a thing where I'm like, okay, like if this were, so they go to, 3094 maybe, but it's got to be the late 90s, right? To raise their son, to raise their baby son, and then years go by and they're still there and they have raised him until he's like 12 or 13. So at that point we're into the early 3100s. And that is where a lot of Cable's teen and adult years fighting Apocalypse are supposed to have been. Ostensibly. Again, this is all a little wibbly wobbly timey-wimey, and if you want to fudge it, I will allow that. I'll be very cool about it. But this book starts in 3077. So is this Cable doing some future rewrite? Why is he near his own timeline, but outside of it? What is the point of that? And then I don't know, given that like you're trying to make me nostalgic for time traveler warrior Cable around his time, you probably do want to be giving me Clan Ascani Apocalypse stuff and not second Roxxon War, Asgardian death cults. Like, they're all cool ideas, dude. I appreciate that you have thoughts too, and you deserve to express them. I'm maybe not gonna buy them here with that. Like, maybe this needed an issue 0 or something to explain what are we doing here.
Well, wasn't that what Time Slide was?
Well, yes and no, because he's already in the middle of this when Time Slide happens. When Time Slide happens, he has already met and makes out with the lady that he meets in this issue. So this is not giving any background on why Cable at the start of Love and Chrome is in this future and what he's doing, and why it is before his baby self arrives in that future. But not so far before that it's like a totally different time period. It's 10 years earlier.
Which is even part of where I had a really powerful realization about the DC universe and the DC model versus the Marvel universe and the Marvel model. Because when DC entered the ring that Marvel was trying to create, because DC was doing its own thing, Marvel were nobodies. Like, sometimes people are like, well, Marvel and DC. Yeah, no, fuck that. Go back 3 years. There was no Sabrina Carpenter. She was just that weird girl from Girl Meets World that's sleeping with that boy from High School Musical, the series that Olivia Rodrigo hates. She was not Sabrina Carpenter, which, by the way, God damn it. I might not like her brother very much, but congratulations, Billie Eilish. Your fans are like none other. You went from number 3 on Spotify Wrapped for the year to number 1, going up 1.7 million plays in 9 days. My God, Espresso is no longer the most streamed song of the year. It is instead Birds of a Feather. 3 years in a row, Billie Eilish, my God, woman, you are something else. No, really, it's Phineas, but it's your voice. But like, you think about how sometimes it wasn't that thing. And when DC was just absolutely still taking names and kicking ass, Marvel was taking ass and kicking names. And so, like, it was different. And so by the time Marvel became the thing it was, DC already had 30 and 40 years of media to refer back to. So from day one, DC started with, but you remember this shit because we're so fucking cool. We've been doing this your entire life. We've been doing this since before you were born. This is referential. And so DC has always had a love of jumping in and out of its own time. It'll tell a story about Batman's early days like it's nothing, because since you were a kid, you've already been reading old stories about Batman's early days. They don't need to justify it. But Marvel is still living under the operating system that tells them that there's nobody older than the age of 17 reading their books, and this is 1963, and everybody's just got a whole lot more cocaine, I guess. And so, like, the way the story has evolved and the way they are projecting these ideas, they want to utilize the ideas that allowed Frank Miller to explore the notion that Batman's origin is different than you think in year one, and yet his future is different than you think in Dark Knight Returns. And they want to do it with Cable similarly, but they lack the understanding of the impressiveness of their longevity. They're so interested in telling you they've been around for 80 years, but telling you that they're such young fellow youths that it doesn't matter. And you know what? It does matter. Don't say Riz. You're old.
It was a good rant. I liked it. You're right. You're 100% correct.
It's the problem. This book is, look how old we are. Look how young we are. Isn't that sexy? No,
and I don't like, on top of that, like sometimes they'll get a cool young person in and that cool young person will write a cool young person book, but then Marvel will treat them like shit, publish the book poorly, never pick up on it again. And so the company can never embrace like the injection of youth that they got by letting Aman Vellani write Ms. Marvel. You know, if Aman Vellani puts Riz in the book, I'm going to buy the language because she's going to write it correctly, but it's not really going to help Marvel, the company, because inevitably they're going to be like, this definitely boosted our numbers with the young brown women. Please go away now. And we're going to let, Ben Percy write the next. And that's the thing. It's like, if you go from Aman Vellani to another interesting young woman writing Ms. Marvel, maybe you create a legacy there. But if the next person writing her is just another dude, then you are constantly chaining yourself with the anchor of your own institutional age. And the problem with this is David Pepos is not like a young cool guy. He's not like a Tom Brevoort. Like, he's not an old company man, but he's not young. Like, he's not bringing anything to it. But what most
he still doesn't have his original eyebrow ring.
He's not bringing anything to it that most dudes who are like 35 and over who come to write for Marvel aren't bringing to books. And I don't know, there was a minute there, especially with young Cable, but also the interaction between young and old Cable and just the kind of exploration of Summer's family dynamics, where it was like, maybe we can break out of the box where Cable is just like a Vietnam War vet, but he's got circuitry. And we were just playing around with that for a while. There were a lot of possibilities. You just can't convince me that 2,000 years in the future, everybody is like, toxic masculinity has taken over to this degree. But nobody really writes Cable like that. And then we get a book like this and it's like, nothing really has changed for Marvel regarding who Cable is and what he's about. I don't know what to do with this. This doesn't even give me what that Children of the Vault book gave me,
which was not nearly enough.
Like,
I really feel like one of the feelings I'm starting to engage with is a sense of disappointment that other people are refusing to imagine as large as I'm imagining. And
good call.
That is really one of the frustrations that I'm having. I have a person that I love more than life. There's a human being in my life that I would gladly punch a train to death for. And this person loves yes and more than anything in this world. But my God, they cannot successfully yes and. they really also that really well. And I love a good also that. A yes and is like, I say to you, well, I'm Wolverine, bub, but 2 of my claws are broken. And you go, yeah, well, I'm Cyclops. Beam. And it's one thing up so it looks like a middle finger. And also that is, I'm Wolverine and my claws are stuck like this, so I'm stuck giving you the middle finger. Also, Deadpool loves chimichangas! And that's like an also that. And one of the things that we're also engaging with is nobody is going to this classic canon and saying yes and. They're saying also that.
Yeah.
They're not taking the idea of Professor, one of the greatest AIs in the history of the Marvel Universe. They're not taking this tribute to the idea that supports the notion that Cable was an X-Men fanboy and extrapolating on it. They're giving him a sexy new AI who just wants to suck his metal dick. And like, cool, but that's exactly the man pain problems we're talking about. And it's not acknowledging the ideas that came before. It's an also that. It's not a yes and.
Yeah. And Cicada is definitely not a yes and. Cicada is an also that. I don't listen. Again, I'm pointing to no. So we had the Vault series, and then we had the other one. This is the other one, the one with him and Kid Cable, where they fight Grey Gargoyle.
Oh, right. And it was so cleverly called Cable.
Listen, Marvel still is telling you that Grey Gargoyle matters, and he is going to strip into his boxer shorts in front of you so that he doesn't turn his clothes to stone. I don't.
Hold on, I'm gonna go check my other copy of Weapon X-Men.
I don't need Cicada. There are you bring Paste Pot Pete back. We're fine. We got plenty of people. You don't need to. I don't.
You know what villain I want? Just write in Big Pete. Big Pete, the sexiest, meanest cartoon character this side of Bluto. Just write him in. He's the new bad guy. He fights Cable. It's fine.
Yeah.
Big Pete. Because your point about Grey Gargoyle, I don't care. Goliath. Write in Goliath. They own that too. I would rather anything but Grey Gargoyle. Because Fabian Nicieza is... Can you imagine if you were born today and
no, I can't.
You were Christian Borle and like you are already a generation removed from the great hoofers. Like Gene Kelly is the sexiest man that ever walked on the planet, but the man was an okay singer. Fred Astaire, one of the greatest dancers to ever live. An okay actor. Like, can you imagine being Christian Borle, who is an unreal singer? One of the
I had to
greatest
Google
actors.
him on the fly, so now I do know who he is, but continue.
Yeah, one of the greatest actors of his generation on stage, and absolutely an unforgettable singer. But he'll never matter the way they do because he's just too late. Fabian Nicieza could have truly been a Bob Kane, could have really been Stan Lee or Jack Kirby. Fabian Nicieza could have had his face on the side of Mount Rushmore, but the fact is, we built that monument too soon. So what do when you were from day one? He's not a has-been. He's not done. He has so much more left in that tank. But what do you do when your greatness was exposed as a child? Miley Cyrus gave this beautiful interview where she's saying that in 2025, she's so excited about the opportunities she's going to get that she hasn't had before. What are you talking about? Your godmother is my literal deity. Literally, her godmother is Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton put her on her lap and they sang together as children. What the fuck opportunity haven't you had, woman? She hasn't, though. And like, that's not my right to take from her. Nor is it my right to say that because Fabian Nicieza has been an absolute powerhouse for 40 years that he doesn't deserve to get to continue to be that powerhouse. The truth is, so many companies waste people like a Fabian Nicieza because they don't understand what to do with someone who's been great for 40 years and has 30 years left in them. Putting Fabian Nicieza on things like Cable because they're familiar is going back to that guy who's terrible at relationships but great in bed. Because it's familiar. Go somewhere new. Find someone new. Give Fabian Nicieza his chance to be great at... Give him Superman. Give him a crossover. Stop putting him in these secondary positions.
And to piggyback off your point, David Pepos isn't somebody new.
True.
He's another, like, when we say find somebody new, find somebody new. And again, it's your Iman Vellani's. It's somebody who would never. But you know, Iman Vellani, great example, because a perfect person to write Miss Marvel. But then she doesn't only need to write Miss Marvel. She could write Cable. She probably doesn't want to, but maybe she does. And there's plenty, like, don't keep hiring the boys and people who hang out with you and people who made comics that you feel comfortable with. Hire people that are going to bring something new to the table. This is a perfectly lovely Cable story. There's some cool art here. There's nothing about it I can say where I'm like, this is just bad. Like, it's not offensive. It's not problematic. It's not stupid. It's not gross. But it's also not especially interesting. I don't know. And it's not especially relevant. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this long term. I don't think we'll be. I mean, when I think about Cable's last 2 years of publishing, I don't think there's a story among them that anybody will be thinking about in another 2 years. That sucks, man. That just, we can do better than that, can't we? I think, you know, I'm okay. Cable's one of my favorite characters. He's in my top 3, and I'm probably okay not seeing him for 2 years over seeing him in stories where it's just like, oh, okay.
It's in that sort of same vein that I find myself a little weary of what's going on with the biggest characters in the Marvel Universe. Something that they keep saying is, you will never believe where One Nation Under Doom or One World Under Doom is going.
I'm sure we'll believe it. Don't worry.
But if I can't believe it, it might be because it's bad. And
right.
I don't mean to say that, like, I am the ultimate voice on what is good, but, like, Marvel, I am literally your target audience. And I know that you'll never, ever understand that. I know that people don't... It's so funny to me because, like, I'm married to a brilliant producer, incredible color artist, and general great guy. And something that we always agree about... There he is. And something we always agree about is, end of the day, that's our bed. And when we go back to that bed, we have to have had each other's backs all day. I cannot agree with him, but when I go out into the world, I agree with him. And if I don't agree with him, that's my husband. Look, I understand you have problems with maybe something he said. That's not my problem. I'm here to defend him, not you. And so, like, that is how that works, right? We have an engagement and a responsibility to one another as part of an agreement, right? One of the things that I think we sometimes see happen with the nature of fandom, the nature of stories, the nature of the way these characters evolve over the course of 20, 30, and 50 years is we see this iteration of this character and we become so personally attached to it. I might not share my bed with Cable, but I've been reading Cable in my bed since I am 7 years old. I can remember reading my copy of the Executioner Agenda in my bed, in my childhood bedroom, next to my Giants football helmet lamp and my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle chest, because anyone who knows me knows I really love, like, wooden chests. It's just a thing. And I had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one as a child. I feel indebted to Cable. I feel like I will never stop giving Cable a try because I feel romantic about him, like my partner, because he's part of what I know. One of the things that I worry about as we continue to become a little bit more of a psychologically dependent fandom is, will the next generation, Mets, Yankees, Cable, Deadpool, the way the previous generation Mets, Yankees, Marvel, DC. And so I'm sort of in an interesting place because, TK, what you love about Cable, I don't love about Cable. What I love about Cable, you don't always love about Cable. And so it's really interesting that even, like I said earlier, two people who we love the same exact character, but we do not love him for the same reasons. What is the nature of how that loyalty will continue to evolve as David Pepose, as Fabian Nicieza, as this iteration of the company man that gets older continues to write this character as he gets older?
I got no answers, only more questions.
Fine, then it's DC time. I'm gonna start with the Atom Project. Okay. So the Atom Project. I'm gonna start with I give this book a good score. I am then going to say I got nothing from this issue that I wouldn't have gotten from an 8-page story. And I really, really tried to suspend that criticism for a couple of months. I had hit every book for 9 months with could have been an 8-page story, could have been an 8-page story, could have been an 8-page story. No, this one literally could have been an 8-page story. I liked a lot of what I got, but kid who can't control his power, so he's accidentally killing people. That's so Joe Casey 2002 on X-Men Get Yourself Together. Two people with similar names running around the same books. That's so 2015 Marvel the Wolverines Get Yourself Together. Like, this did not give me anything. I liked the characters, I liked the art, I liked the writing, but I don't think I liked the book.
I think I had a slightly different reaction because, again, this was a DC newbie for me. Except for then partway through, I was like, wait a second. This isn't quite a newbie because I've been reading this guy in Jenny Sparks. And it's kind of the same guy because he's clearly got problems.
Yeah.
Also not the same guy. And this is where we start to get into a little bit of the, like, what's actually happening at DC at any given moment.
Is this them trying to make that Jenny Sparks story possible?
Right. Which, like, at the very least, you know, you do get alternate stories and alternate people at Marvel, but it's just not happening the same way that it happens at DC, where the book will give you no indication that it is any kind of Elseworld or anything else. But then just I will have to find out basically from Nico or dc.fandom.wikia that in fact whatever story I'm reading is not canon and is just a story that's happening. So that was a bit of a confusion for me. I thought this was really well written and had great style. I really liked the two dialoguing narrators. There was a lot here that was interesting. I think we might be hitting my quota, and my quota was the availability that I had for this was enormous because I'm not a DC person, but I can imagine if you are a DC person, this might have been getting old like 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're starting to hit my quota for issue starts, thing happens, then we go back to the Watchtower. Here's where we explain how everything is happening on the Watchtower. Here's where we're like, this guy's doing science, this person's doing magic. Did you know that everybody's power switched? Look, there's the question. She's like the sheriff. Things are going on, stuff is happening. Go to the science room, go to the math room. This is the English department. Oh, is this just a school now? Okay. I am still loving it because, again, no previous DC knowledge. A lot of times I need my handheld. But DC is a weird, they're like, here, we're going to hold your hand to walk off this fucking cliff. And then as soon as you get off the cliff, they let go. And also you're falling off of a cliff.
It winds up feeling a little bit like there's a I guess disunderstanding is even what I mean. Like, misunderstanding is where there's a sense of confusion, but like disinterest is where there's a willful not wanting to learn. A disunderstanding is where people do not want to understand. And like, it sometimes feels like there is a disunderstanding in DC where 10 people think that people are me. and 10 people think that people are you, and the other 80 people think that no one reads comics and only goes to see a couple of movies a year, and those 80 people are correct. So then what do you do when it's Adam, where it's Adam for Adam, where it's two people who nobody in the grander scheme of things really cares about? And I'm much more interested in your interpretation of Adam for Adam, than I am in mine, because I've read Captain Atom and the Atom a bunch of times. This is, for me, again, iterative. For you, there's something a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to take my lower grade and I'm going to suspend it for now. I'm going to put it in a basket and I'm going to come back to it a little bit later on. But this was not a book that inspired me to read the next book. This was a book that really made me excited to see what game might include a scene from this, because I really liked the coloration on the explosions.
I really get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, Mike Perkins is a really interesting artist. I know I've seen his stuff elsewhere, but it really stuck out to me here. This book has really that kind of descendant of Kirby science happening, where everything looks like such sufficiently advanced technology that it becomes magic in a very cool way. And yeah, I mean, I to your idea that this is iterative, I think you're probably right. I certainly can't say that you're wrong, but something that's interesting about iterative comic art like this is it can't always be somebody's first iteration. And I think that's why it might work for me, because it might be good as that. But I think that is a really dangerous game to play in comics in the year of our Lord 2025, because straight up, it probably is not most people's first comic. And more to the point, you probably are losing more people doing another iteration in order to allow new users to jump on board than you would writing for a Nico and just making sure a TK could follow along. I think that is the right strategy. I just happen to benefit this time around for this particular book by doing the other strategy, but I would probably be really disappointed if I knew more about this. When Marvel does this, I am really disappointed.
I was going to say, I think I agree with you, especially for unknown properties. With Cable and Deadpool, I can pretty comfortably fit my foot in my mouth. I've learned it the hard way, and I wanted to chew down to the ankle reading I have a healing factor. No, I have a healing factor. No, I love chimichangas. I have 6 claws. I wanted to see if I could get my knee in my mouth. And then when I opened Cable and it was like, I have a techno-organic virus. Oh my God. Yes, I understand. And Akira Kurosawa directed 7 Samurai. Yes, congratulations. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you're cool for mentioning it, but we know the rules, so don't worry about it. You could have put that in a quick, this is what you need to know page. Like, what if 1/6 of every page dedicated to this is what you need to know to read this book was given to a fake trading card's backside for the main character? And after the first issue, you do minor characters until you're out of characters. What if you just put in the Ultra Fleer 94 backside card style, when I can remember it's 94 because there's a Fatal Attractions card, that tells you everything you need to know? Because then I wouldn't need to read 45 captions that say, I have the techno-organic virus, also I'm telekinetic, also war-torn life. That's prose shit. You are not impressing me by showing me you can write things down over and over again, Marvel editorial, because I am at this point convinced that writers pull a K.A. Applegate on Animorphs / Peanuts parents kind of wah, 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 when describing powers. It is just morphing sequence AI algorithm. And I don't think anything was made better in Deadpool and Wolverine or Cable by over-explaining those things. Though I agree with you, for both Captain Atom and The Atom, it did improve the book, even though the en media res storytelling, the flashback, and then the jump back to the present was, for me, a little too congratulations, you've seen Memento.
Yeah, I mean, but that's constantly happening too much. I've just kind of given up on trying to make people stop doing that. What I will say, I think the big difference between this and Love and Chrome is this is absolutely feeding into the grander all-in storyverse. You know, this is what is happening on another wing of the Watchtower on the same day as the Questions book, on the same day as Challengers of the Unknown. You know, this is happening alongside everything else that I've been reading, which is what makes the Jenny Sparks thing so confusing, but setting that aside. Cable, Love, and Chrome is happening in 1987, 2025, 2099, 3099, 3077. Nowhere, Everywhere, Could Matter, Will Never Matter. So at the very least, part of what the Atom Project gave me was like, oh, you've been really into All In, you've been loving seeing the new Watchtower and everything, here's another thing from there. And I go, okay, yeah, because I want more. I want to know everything. I want to know everything that's going on. I want to meet everybody that's on the Watchtower, so that the next time Darkseid comes and is like, I'm mad at all of you, I'll be like, those are my friends, leave them alone, you jerk. And I feel like I'm getting closer to everybody, issue by issue, book by book. I don't feel that when Apocalypse eventually shows up, it goes, even I think Revelation was stupid, and Cable is there, I'm going to be like, yeah, the one from Love and Chrome, he matters and is relevant to this.
All that for a drop of blood. No, I really love your point. And I think one of the things that you're hitting on is the thing that I forget, having not come to a single company as an adult. I don't think I've started reading anything new as an adult. And I consider my adulthood starting around 30. I went through like a massive psychological transformation around 30 as a result of some stuff. And, you know, I grew up a lot in like 6 months. And everything after that has been really the focus for me. And I'm 38 now. Yeah, I'm 38 now. And so I feel very much like I read a lot of books as an adult for the first time in this last couple of years, and I've read a lot of things I'd never read before. I don't know, like, I believe in therapy, but I don't necessarily believe in therapy for me sometimes, because I find individual people way too easy to manipulate. But like audiences, that's a lot of people coming at you for your opinions over and over again, and they remember every fucking thing you say. So like, y'all are my therapist in a really healing, special kind of way. It's the bonus hidden track on the Velvet Rope, you know, God's favorite kind of situation. So I feel like when I'm talking about my experience with DC and my transformative experience, my first 2 comics were Green Lantern Showcase. God, what is it? It's DC Showcase. It's like 10, 11, 12. It's whatever the first ever appearances of Hal Jordan. I read those 3. And I read Daredevil, Man Without Fear 1 through 5. And then I turn to my dad and I say, Daddy-o, yo, I love comics. Hey. And I don't know why we're Italian for this, because we're very, very Greek. But my father says to me, all right, well, then you're going to read the classics. And he goes out and he buys me 8 X-Men trades. So I read like all the big crossovers and the little crossovers that also got printed. My dad was such I mean, to this day, still a king, and of generosity in particular. And he also bought me a bunch of DC. And the DC books I cared about the most were all Batman. And I lost my way with him for a really long time because there was a silly little thing that happened that flooded my basement, and my complete collection of Batman 1963 to current was ruined. And I felt like I could never go back to loving this character. I think 2024 was my year of Batman. I think I spent 23 out of every 24 hours on something bat related. I don't think I have ever dove into anything as headfirst as Batman this year or X-Men when I was 17. And gosh, I realized that I read my trade of Hush just about a day before I met Kevo.
Oh.
And that was the last time I read Hush, was maybe the day before I met Kevo, because I met Kevo the first day of a semester. And what I used to do the day before a semester started was I would literally just lock myself in my bedroom, read comics, and drink obsessively on the phone with my friend Chris. And so the last memory I have before meeting Kevo is reading Hush. And
that is 18 years this month.
So this was my first time reading Hush in quite a while. And I read it in about 2 hours because, my gosh, I forgot how hard it is to put down a Jeff Loeb comic for me. The guy might not be very brilliant. He might be a hack, but does he write in my sound? You cannot find a single cool idea Joss Whedon had that he didn't steal from Jeff Loeb. And
I mean, it's also 23 years old at this point. You know, he was kind of, at the time especially, you know, it was more original, I think, than we give him credit for.
And years later, I genuinely think that Scott Snyder kind of swipes the whole story beginning to end for Court of Owls. And rereading Hush in the course of about 2 hours was a reminder how much this book holds my attention, and will never let it go, even though I think I can't give the issue or the arc better than a B-. I can't. It's not even clear what happens at the end. It's so weird. And it's so weird, but I goddamn give it an A+.
So this was an interesting one because sometimes when we do these things, I try and come from a perspective of what is actually true of me, like that I am new to all this, and like maybe I'm just picking up an issue. And so again, Hush came out in 2002 and has been reprinted like every 5 years like clockwork. And so I picked up an earlier reprinting of it, as well as issue 608 facsimile edition, which came out today. And it's so interesting that you said what you said about just how you couldn't put it down, because my initial thought was that I would do exactly what I said. I would read issue 608 and sort of just speak from the perspective of somebody, you know, any person like myself who maybe might not know everything about Hush and might see that this issue was being reprinted and just pick it up and, you know, not know that it's part of a bigger story, not pick up a Hush trade paperback or something like that, or a hardcover, just pick up what you saw. But in fact, I was so riveted that I kept reading for a bit. I did not keep going too long. I decided to pull back because I didn't want to make this a discussion of the whole story. I really did kind of want to have the discussion about the first issue, which I personally did not think was bad. I didn't think it was amazing, but here's what I will say. Excellent blueprint for a Batman story that is not a Batman origin story, but is in everything you need to know to Batman. And I just wish this was one that a movie maker would copy, because this is exactly what I like. This is everything this has is what every Batman adaptation that I hate, including the Nolan films and the Reeves film, don't have, that make me hate them so much. Like the fact that we get 3 villains and 2 of them are really sci-fi and one of them is basically a gay man in a catsuit. That Batman is also kind of darkly campy in this way, where there's this one moment where he's like, the only thing I can do is make them afraid, and he's like like which is nothing. That's not a but it's so good. Like, it's really realistic Batman, really dark and gritty every time I always default to Tina Fey saying really dark and gritty superhero movies. These are things that suck. Yeah, it does. It sucks. It's so boring. It's so dull and so dumb. And I should say, for me, because that's not a universal recipe, and those movies were insanely successful. I'm clearly not. It's not. Mine is not the only opinion that matters. But I really don't enjoy that. I love the Burton films. I have a stupid fondness for Forever and Batman and Robin. And this really felt closer to all of those than it did to Nolan and Reeves. And I just thought it had a lot. And more than anything, it really showed how it does not need to be an origin story or even an early in his career story. It can be right smack the fuck dab in the middle of his career, and still be really fun and really interesting. I will say, I have to assume this is intentional, but it is immediately apparent who the villain is. Although that's issue 2 stuff, so maybe we'll save it for another time.
There's a secret villain. Somebody is in charge of that person. So
somebody's in charge of Hush?
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
So at least you're like, oh, well, you waited till the last 7 pages. Oh. Imagine if you found out that, like, the Dark Phoenix was secretly being controlled by, like, I don't know, Mesmero the whole time. There's an ending. And it's a surprise because it's wacky.
Fair.
But, you know, I also think Scott Snyder, like I said, he stole it.
Yeah.
For Court of Owls. But the other thing is that it's about understanding that you really can't steal from a character that's 100 years old. What are you going to tell me? That, you know, some new writer tasked with coming up with a new story for Sherlock Holmes stole from the Hound of Baskervilles? Like, that's just bonkers. So, yeah, obviously, with a character that's a modern myth, you're going to borrow from the modern myths. That's just what we do. But Hush stands the test of time as a great way to Batman quickly. A lot of us have to do things quickly. I know that today I watched 2 episodes of Dragula while I did some work. Why? Because I fucking hate Abora. I don't think I've hated a reality contestant this much in my entire goddamn life. Ever. In my life. Ever. And Katsuji on Top Chef by more than anyone else ever. Katsuji is my nemesis. Personally, like, that is my Saruman, personally. So, but anyway, I watched 2 episodes of this show that I definitely care about, that I definitely love, because sometimes it's just really hard to spend that much time loving something. It's difficult because I have to fucking make money to live, and I have to smoke weed to survive, and I have to lift weights to fuck boys, and, like, there's things you have to do in a day. And so you can't spend 23 out of 24 hours on Batman. So sometimes, in favor of reading 11 arcs that took place in the 1970s, you can read Hush. And that will give you everything you need. I was recently reading this list of 27 Batman arcs that you should read before you die. And I'd read 13 of them, and of the remaining 14, there were like 9 that I was like super interested in. And I made this list, and I've been going through it. I'd never read Killing Joke as an adult. Terrible. Why would he laugh with the man that shot the woman that he loves as a child in the pelvis? Frightening. Arkham Asylum is beautiful, but that is well before Grant Morrison was concerned with being understandable. We're still 3 years from that. I've been reading, I read Death in the Family for the first time as an adult. You know what? When the Ayatollah tells Joker that he is going to be the new UN ambassador to Iran, it maybe doesn't hold up the way you'd think it would if you're Jim Starlin. So I am having this realization that the gods you grew up with, they age. You know, it's that moment in Season of Mists where the forgotten Orientalist gods tell Morpheus that they've taken in Godzilla, Elvis Presley, and Marilyn Monroe, and they're going to be just fine as gods now because your gods change. And I grew up an altar boy and a choir boy who eventually found superheroes and then would go on to find guitars, which are the real gods. But like understanding that when the Pope says theology changes, it changes. It defines everything. Oh my God. But comics are a different situation because the cardinals and the bishops and even the priests get to make these changes, and they slowly creep up the cycle. And these myths, these religions, these creatures that have existed on the page for 100 years, and then in some not canonical, but like canonical way, go way further back. Like, it's hard for me at 38 to look at Hush and not recognize the way many of us would go to church 4 times a year and be proud of our religion. You can read Hush and say you're a Cape Catholic Batman fan because this is going to give you what you need to understand that bigger picture of the theology of Batman.
That was definitely, kind of the vibe I got. We also got to shout out the Jim Lee art.
Remarkably excellent Jim Lee art.
It is really good. I will say sometimes I think we all forget how much the Kuberts and Jim Lee were borrowing from each other back in the day. Nobody is the originator. Nobody is stealing, but it was one of those things where I knew this is a famous arc, so I knew about it and I knew who wrote and drew it. And of course I saw the names on it while reading, but it just kind of like sunk in the back of my head, and I was reading it and I was like, oh wow, Andy Kubert's doing really good art here. Love this Andy. Wait a second. No, it's Jim Lee, who is still doing a fantastic job. It's just very funny how much the greats, and Silvestri too is in the same mix, although he's a little more he does a few things that are very Silvestrian, that you can sort of define it as his. And even Liefeld is in there too, except he goes so exaggerated to try and make himself stand out that it becomes like, and he can't draw feet, so you always know when it's a Liefeld.
Well, and you know what, we have, I feel so badly, Will Spartaccio is alive, but didn't we just lose somebody from that era recently?
Well, we lost Hildebrandt.
Who?
Greg Hildebrandt.
Oh my God, no, yeah, Hildebrandt for sure. But we got Pacheco. We lost Carlos Pacheco, and I was trying to think who was part of that, like 1993. This is what art looks like. That was like Macy's had to have it in their stores because it was so important. Pacheco, Portacio, Lee, these Kuberts, these names that you're saying are literally the artists that are still inspiring us this minute.
Yeah, it's really funny because they absolutely are inspiring us, but it's very interesting the way that people don't steal those styles the same way. I was talking about some of the writers that I'm like, oh, you're writing a story that somebody else already wrote. And that Valerio Schiti, RB Silva, Pepe Larraz were all so inspired by Jim Lee, Andy Kubert, Mark Silvestri, Carlos Pacheco, Will Spartaccio, but they don't draw like they do. They really draw in their own styles.
You know what? As a guy who's, it's one of the things that's really tough because, like, I think you have such a unique voice for fiction, but you are so careful about what you release. And I feel like sometimes when you take a look at somebody like a Chris Claremont, he was not careful about what he released. And like, I have this nightmare that one day everybody's going to look at my work and realize that all I've ever done is combine equal parts Alien and Cardcaptor Sakura into a gay boy. And they're going to be like, oh, well, that's all Kid Riot ever was. And it obviously it's true. But no, I mean, the depths of it are so complicated because, like, it's easy to become an imitation of the people you love. It's easy to become iterative, as we keep saying this show. But, like, when I think about putting bold new voices to ideas, and I think about how somebody could come along and could do an all-in version of something, you had this bold idea for the Green Lantern Corps a year ago to make them the Green Lantern essentially Peace Corps. You'd had the idea within Krakoa. You had several ideas within Krakoa that some came true, some didn't. But, like, when you look at a Batman, what parts would you capture? Are you here for the detective? Are you here for the daddy? Are you here for the lover?
I am here for the sci-fi camp. I love that he is not Tony Stark, in that it is not a Batman suit. It's not the technology of the suit. But I think somewhere between Wilson Fisk, because the thing about Tony Stark being a billionaire is Tony Stark just, it needs to be noted, has enough money to constantly be building another Iron Man suit. It sort of doesn't really matter that he is wealthy in the same way that it does for Wilson Fisk. It's very important to note that Wilson is wealthy and what that wealth is, why it's there, how it's there, and what's happening next.
Well, I keep hearing that there's this amazing 6-star rank 4 Wilson Fisk who is very, very wealthy.
Ugh. He just needs one more 6-star class catalyst. Help me, people. But Batman is a little bit closer to Wilson Fisk in that, like, he also has this investment in Gotham as a city. And, the Wayne Industries is such a huge employer. And so somewhere between Iron Man and Wilson Fisk, I think, rests this very interesting zone for Batman for me. But then you really have to tie it in with how campy it is. I mean, DC to me just left hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the table, not playing around with that idiot editor who said that Batman doesn't eat pussy because it would make him less of a man. That's immediately where you start publishing issues where that's all that is being discussed, which I know
there are all those Nightwing books that are literally just his ass in pinup.
Truly,
you literally just put images out of Batman with his tongue out.
Yeah,
that is it.
Yeah, and I know that DC can do this because they are releasing the most horrifying book in the history of comics that Nico alerted me to the other day, which is just a book about Harley Quinn's farts.
I want to know what fucking pervert is getting what they want, because then I should get what I want.
Yeah, truly.
And Wolverine should go on a bottom saga like you've never seen.
Yeah. It's and it just is such fantastic proof that these things are always possible when somebody wants them. And that book maybe will do well. Maybe there is
no.
I hope not, but maybe
no.
It will. But I
was
certainly
so intense it rung my guitars.
So yeah, Batman, campy, high tech, money, and then just this rogues gallery of sci-fi creatures. Like that is to me, that's what I want to see. I do think at this point, Batman having a moment, like I would maybe have Bruce Wayne have a heart attack and have that kind of moment that a lot of men have after their heart attack where they chill the fuck out a little bit. This was a reminder that Bruce Wayne his personality does really change. He's really in this zone right now of being a very good guy. And the man in Hush is going to protect the city, but he's not necessarily a good guy. Like, he is going to fucking terrorize a criminal. And because that's the only way that they're going to learn their lesson. But Batman in today's books is probably not going to terrorize a criminal. He's just going to stop them, even if that means punching them out and giving them a traumatic brain injury. That he's going to stop them, and he takes no joy in it, and he's not doing anything weird. But it is proof that Batman's personality can change a little bit, and I think I would loosen him up. I really do. I know that I am a very good example of how somebody can be very depressing, very stoic, very miserable, and also like silly and happy and stupid. It is possible to contain those two multitudes. And even if it is like sometimes Batman's having a good day, I would print some more good days in the pages of DC Comics. But it really does surprise me in all this time we haven't ever done a little more reference to Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. And what I'm describing is closer to those two, which are some like borderline unwatchable films, but they have.
Oh, what? I don't agree. I think they are.
I mean, I love them, but like I know they're not
spectacularly silly fun.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. The Burton films are my least favorite Batman films.
That's totally fair. I love Batman. I do not like Batman. I love Batman Forever or Batman Returns. For because Michelle Pfeiffer is the ultimate camp princess. And Danny DeVito. He's still just playing Frank from It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, no. God, I love the Only Sunny actors a lot more than I love the Only Sunny characters.
Yeah.
And Rob McElhenney is someone I want to be.
Yeah.
And I just wish my body would take the trend like his did. But not that I would know, because I don't have the trend cough. You can tell my cough is weak. But but I do often have a real sense of this idea that I forgot the joke that I was going to make, but I do have a real sense of the idea that these characters wind up being so iterative of when they're from. And Danny DeVito's Penguin is one of those things that I think it attached to Danny DeVito more than it attached to the Penguin.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think the Penguin is gross in comic. Like, Colin Farrell's inevitable. Guys, don't fuck with me. He didn't win it for showing his dong in Mark Anthony, Caesar, whatever movie he made.
You're just remembering that sex tape.
It's the shoddiest fucking filmmaking in the history of porn, but I love it. Seriously, weirdest audio ever. But he would go on to be in Penguin, and I'm positive he is going to win, or at least be nominated for the Emmy. His reviews for Penguin are what every actor in their 50s dreams of. I was trying to explain to my parents why Matlock is so important. Like, number 2 show on CBS, number 2 new show on television. Overall, pretty strong in the demo. Highest 18 to 49 for a show starring somebody over the age of 50 in like 20 years. Highest show starring somebody over the age of 50 to stream in like ever. Like, this Matlock show, old people, it's a moment. And like, listen, I'm gonna watch anything Kathy Bates does. I don't fuck around. And yeah, I grew up on Matlock and Columbo. I like a good detective. So like, fuck you. But like, no, like, it is a really interesting time where right now we are facing a lot of iterative changes in the way we handle not just media, but the way we handle ongoing media. TV shows didn't used to have volumes. TV shows now have volumes. You're not used to seeing somebody else become Matlock in a world that is vaguely Matlock's world. You're used to seeing somebody else become Batman in a world that is vaguely Batman's world. So we're in a really interesting place where I think we are facing the idea that characters have existed for hundreds of years and comics are hoping to continue setting the trend. I think DC is setting that trend and Marvel is hoping to follow what TV does. But if you want to be brave, if you want to be fearless, you have to do what the Marvel Cinematic Universe did for movies. You have to be willing to make a huge fool of yourself instead of always playing it safe. In fact, I think my favorite TV show that I marathoned this last couple of months, Skeleton Crew. Not because it's the world's greatest show or anything, but because it takes more chances than any other Star Wars show has taken in a world where no Marvel show is willing to take a single chance. And Hush was not willing to take those chances. And it's a legend because it did the expected thing perfectly. Atom Project took a lot of chances and might not be remembered because it took them all kind of wildly. But that's better than anything Deadpool and Wolverine or Cable did, where it took no chances safely.
Yep, I think you just kind of pulled it all together and nailed it. And that's the thing, like as I think the beneficiary of the Atom Products wild chance taking, that's the thing that I said. Like, I really enjoyed it. I think probably this was not the move if you wanted this to be a successful book that was remembered forever. But I love that you guys took the chance and it paid off in some capacity. Like, I will remember this book. Nobody will remember Love and Chrome or Deadpool and Wolverine. Nobody will. Not old fans, not new fans. It's not going to matter to anybody. No chances were taken.
I think this would be the thing left out of the inevitable collection of Percy omnibus volumes. This will not make it in. I think Wolverine will make it in, and this won't.
And I mean, Wolverine is a chance taker right there. That's a weird little thing. Not always my favorite, but I appreciate it. But yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. It is all about, I do think Marvel, the MCU does take chances sometimes, and that's when they succeed. I think Agatha all along was a real risk. I think Loki season 2 was a real risk. I think they do take chances, and that's when they succeed. And I think when they just try and be as non-boat rocky as possible, even within those shows, even within Agatha and even within Loki, that's really where they don't always succeed and they get a little boring. But comics, dude, you're gonna release another one next month. Take a fucking chance. You're gonna release another miniseries this year. We got 2 Blood Hunters miniseries, one immediately after the other. So if you just take a chance on one thing, there's every likelihood that you even could just get 5 more issues immediately after if it doesn't pay off. So just go for it. Just be a little more free, because this is how you create the things that the movies and TV shows want to emulate. These become their storyboards. These become their source material. But if you just make stuff that is repetitive and boring and iterative, then we're just going to be sitting here talking about nothing. And I would like to talk about stuff. So give us fuel for the fire, please.
And part of what's so important is understanding that the fire isn't just about people like us. The fire is about people like Kevo, who produced this show and listens and has things to say. Kevo, we talked about, I would say, 4 characters that are associated closely with not just the Marvel or DC cinematic universe, but with superhero movies in general. And then we talked about the Atoms. So how do you feel about what you heard this episode?
I am intrigued, obviously. I tried to zip up with a lot of the comments. We talked about a lot of these things. We talked about Agatha recently. We talked about the Loki season 2 finale and its Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. I really am feeling with my own fandom that I bring up a lot on this show, Doctor Who, a lot of the ways that you guys are saying you feel with comics right now, and feeling that there needs to be an invigoration and fresh blood. And there's good stuff in there too, but we finally watched the Doctor Who Christmas special and I enjoyed a lot of it, but there were a lot of things where I was like, yep, this is Stephen Moffat writing the same thing that he has been writing for 20 years. And I feel like it's just in such a weird state right now. A lot of that is because they've only put out 23 episodes in 5 years, almost. So, it's tough. And you just try to keep on hope, especially because these fandoms have been around for so long and they are so beloved. And there are fans out there that want to keep it alive and keep it running, and those fans become writers. And, you just got to keep rooting for the ones that you think are doing a good job, and the ones you think are not doing so good a job, you just have to let them know in very polite ways. Just politely as possible. And you can find me being polite over on the socials, ostensibly at Kevo Really. That's KEVOREALLY. Nico, did you have a question, or were you just queuing that up?
Oh, no, I had a snarky thing to say about sometimes they'll just find your podcast and tell you why you're wrong about your opinion.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they say nice things. Sometimes they say weird things. Who knows? So you just got to keep being you.
I want to say that while I do appreciate that they can find you being polite over on all of your social medias, they can also find you being rude with your daring and bold thoughts. Something that I really appreciate as we are starting 2025 is that a lot of people take a lot of shots at a lot of things and don't always have the gumption to back it up. And something I appreciate is that if you check out Kevo's stuff over at Kevo Really, he will go on a deep diatribe so that you understand his perspective. One of the things that this show is so good at is these rants, is these long monologues, and Kevo might not always say them, but you can always find them typed out. And if you're looking for somebody new to follow in 2025, that's the guy.
I'm going to try to be better about it. Yeah, I did a thing about all of the Disney Pixar stuff because I am also displeased, but I am displeased as someone who has supported them for a very long time. And, we are people who support the things that we love. Nico and I got our start in podcasting as a couple by reviewing the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we had a lot of harsh things to say, but we had a lot of lovely things to say because we want the art to be good and we want to celebrate and we want to enjoy ourselves. So you can find me enjoying myself on this program, and you can find me enjoying myself watching these two knuckleheads every Wednesday. So thank you for tagging me in. And I love hanging out with you guys.
Well, speaking of people that people love hanging out with, as much as we love hanging out with you, this guy over here hanging out on Blue Sky, I love seeing people follow you. I love seeing your number go up. If for no other reason, I think people should be listening to you. And as we start 2025, one of the things that I really hope is that everybody comes into their voice, and something that's been so complicated with a show like this, where we are multiple medias across multiple genres, can be making sure people understand that you are more positive about Drag Race than you are about comics, because the way we react to individual media is a little bit different. The way I react to Batman is different than the way I react to Daredevil. Like, everything that Batman does is cool because he's Batman, whatever. He's just a fun guy. But anything Daredevil does, what a personal affront, and what is wrong with you? And so, it can be really interesting following somebody who has such a wide breadth of interests and somebody who takes things so differently than I do. And so I've really enjoyed seeing you come into your own, not just as a Batman fan, but as a bigger DC fan, even though we've spent the most time on Batman Origins. Sorry about it. DC.
How can you not? It's the only thing they publish.
Really. But as we start 2025, what are your hopes for the two comic companies that we spend the most time on?
With DC, I really am. I mean, critical hope. I hope they get more women writing for them. It's a little disheartening how many men we end up covering and talking about. More just like high-minded hope. I would really love to see them continue knocking it out of the park with All In, with the Absolute line, with whatever the kind of bringing together and resolution of these two things is going to be. Or maybe they're going longer than a year, so maybe not this year. Maybe this year is just about seeing those things continue to be really cool. For Marvel, that is tougher. That really is tougher. I hope they get some new blood in all around. Just I want to see some different names, not even names that have never been seen before at Marvel, but names that maybe get treated as sort of secondary or tertiary, become really primary and get to become thought leaders in the company. And I really hope that they do just show me something that shows a love of taking some kind of risk, of doing things a little bit differently, and for that to be not just like we published one issue that was a little risky, but like our next event is going to be really, and I'm not talking about One World Under Doom, I mean whatever comes after that, maybe it's 2 years down the line or something, but give me something really like, oh wow, that could potentially be just an utter explosion of a failure, and then I will, and if it's good, I'll be so impressed. Yeah, that's what I hope for.
I mean, that is really what they did in 2005 with Identity Crisis, as Marvel was over there kind of. I think ultimately it's great that history is looking better on House of M, but at the time House of M was not a well-regarded event.
No. Even if you think that the depowering was a risky move, the event was not looked at well, and that was a risky move, and it didn't pay off, and we kind of got stuck with some ugliness for years.
Well, I would love to see some beautifulness, and I would love to see you post some House of TK over.
Well, I publish a lot of House of TK, and by that I mean meals that I make in my house.
And as somebody who has gotten to eat them and thinks that at least 2 of them are on my top 5 meals I've eaten, and one of them was French toast. Ladies and gentlemen, this man makes a breakfast. Where can everybody find you on the internet?
You find me at TK Elemental. Where can everybody find you, Nico?
Nico Action, Nicoation, Nico Action Music, Nicoationmusic. You guys can find all of the different feeds of this channel on the internet at X is for Show, X is for Podcast, HTML, Husbands Talking More or Less. You guys can also check us out all over the socials at our individual accounts, but more than anything, there's 3 things you guys can do for us that would help us. Like, comment, and subscribe on any of those socials. Super grateful. But 3 things you guys can do for yourselves. Number 1, stay safe. It's a spooky, scary world out there, and they are constantly publishing Batman Origins. You never know where Joe Chill is going to be. Number 2, you guys can be brave. We love who you are, which is why number 3, you guys can evolve daily, because who you were yesterday, incredible. Who you are today, we love it. But who you are tomorrow, that is the dream. And until we get to be there alongside you, reading those Batman Origins, one after another, as Cable time travels further into the future. We'll see you.